We're live.
We're live. Hello, everybody. On the day before Thanksgiving, it's so nice to have you here and welcome to the weekly Wise Leadership Show. I am so excited today for my special guest, Isabelle Gershon. Isabelle is only 13, and yet she has been showing her leadership already for years. She has been an activist organizing weekly Black Lives Matter campaigns, organizing public events such as an RBG vigil, serving as a neighborhood ambassador for Lauren Underwood, and even interviewing New York Senator and presidential candidate Kirsten Gillibrand. I welcome her today as my special guest and, of course, as my daughter. Welcome, Isabelle.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk.
I'm excited to have you here today, and I know it might be unusual for a mother-daughter team, but I think it's so important for people to see what wise leadership looks like in our youth. And you have done so many powerful and impactful things just over the last few years that I think it's important for people to see a glimpse of that. And I hope on this eve of Thanksgiving, it gives people hope and inspiration and more gratitude.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about what wise leadership is like at this age, especially when I have a lot of time to expand on it. So it's kind of more of in the process interview than maybe having a ton of accomplishments throughout my whole life.
Right, right. It's like we get to watch the development with you, which is really cool because our listeners can also, keep watching you as you grow and develop and all the new things that you do. So it's really a gift to our audience. So thank you.
I'm excited to get started.
So tell me, Isabelle, what does wise leadership mean to you when you think about what it means to be a wise leader? How is that different than other forms of leadership?
Well, I think being a wise leader, in I do a lot of work in politics, so wise leadership in general means in the political world to be focused on the people you're with and to be working with your community and to be leading for other people because a lot of times I feel a lot of times as we're seeing right now a good shift in leadership, but for a while it was really focused on special interests and other things like that. So now I think that wise leadership means not being self-centered in your leadership, but also looking out for your community. So I think it's a really abstract ideal when we're talking about wise leadership and especially in politics. But I think it's really what you make of it. But in politics, it means really being focused on your community and being focused on how to help people.
Right. It sounds like being focused on your constituents, being focused on representing the underrepresented and making sure that that people have a voice and that we're working in the best interest of all.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you're awfully young for all you have done already. Can you tell me about a time that looking back now, maybe you were so young then you didn't realize you were acting as a leader, but looking back now, you're like, oh, that's kind of where it began.
Well, I think it's hard to really pinpoint that because we're born leaders, even if we don't realize it. But I think one of the things I didn't really think of as leadership at the time or wise leadership at the time, but I've realized it is a couple years ago I put together an LGBTQ plus alliance, and I basically did it as a way just for everyone around me to feel heard. So we had a forum to just talk. And now that I think back on that, I think that was wise leadership, seeing a problem, seeing how the queer community was underserved at my school and my community, and then creating this platform where it wasn't fully like, let's be activists. It was just, let's discuss, let's have a forum to talk.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely think that's an example of wise leadership and feeling a need in the community and again helping those that are underrepresented feel seen and heard, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about some of the things you've done as a young wise leader.
Well, I'll try to do this in chronological order because that's a little bit easier to think through. But
Sure.
I think in 2016, I wouldn't say I was a leader at the time, but I was really building that platform to be a leader because during the 2016 election, I started to kind of question things and watch debates. I think I got to be involved in a campaign kind of vicariously through other adult family members. So that's when I started to kind of realize what politics meant to me. And I think when I was interested in politics in 2016, I wasn't doing it because I wanted to have a career in it. As I think about it now, I just noticed how this is affecting me because a lot of times I hear, you're so young, why would you care? Just like have fun and be a teenager or be a kid. But I started to realize this is affecting me as being Jewish, being queer, being a female. It all affected me at the age of 8. It's affecting me at the age of 13. So that's kind of when I laid the groundwork for it. And then it's hard to list everything, but I've organized protests, organized vigils. I was able to introduce Senator Kirsten Gillibrand at I have one of her signs at one of her campaign events, and I've just done a variety of work with other campaigns. But I think that one thing we don't really realize is what made us into leaders before we fully realized it, and that can be at a very young age.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. And, obviously I have the benefit of knowing you all your life. And when I think back, I can certainly see those leadership attributes at a young age where other small children would allow their mothers to do for them. You were very independent and wanting to do for yourself. And I think that was one of the early starts, to leadership.
Yeah, I think we really need to leadership I think has become kind of put on this pedestal, like you need to be like Mark Zuckerberg or Jeff Bezos. Whether you like them or not, that's like considered leadership, but leadership can just start with how you are around your family, how you act at school. It's not as much like building companies that are worth billions of dollars. It's about the smaller things too.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you say that because when I wrote this book, I really wanted it to be for all women. And I didn't want women who chose a different path, who maybe chose to be that stay-at-home mom or who who aren't senators or these big titles to recognize their own leadership. I mean, I think stay-at-home moms are some of the most powerful leaders because they're leading their homes and leading their children, and often they're highly involved in their communities as well with the PTA and different organizations. And I just wanted every woman to see what type of leader they are, and that leadership comes in all different sizes and shapes and forms. And that's really been sort of the platform of these interviews, is recognizing that leadership comes from all walks of life. And you may not be on the cover of a magazine or being interviewed on a news channel to be called a leader.
Yeah. And I think it's even about leadership in all people. So even leadership is I do a lot of work with with the LGBTQ plus community and other stuff. And you're a leader especially when we think back to people like in the 60s and 70s who were being themselves. Like when we think about Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, they were not these big senators, or I don't they were kind of big names at the time, but they were leaders because they chose to be themselves. They were transgender and they chose to be proud of that. They chose of to be proud that they're people of color and use that as a way to lead. So I think being a leader isn't just, all the things you do, but it's just how you present yourself and how you act and how you choose to behave.
Yes, yes, 100%. And I think you're talking about an element of wise leadership, which is also authentic leadership,
Yeah.
right? It's like finding your particular voice and knowing what's important to you, what platforms are important to you, and that you're going to fight for. And I think it's really interesting being new to the campaign scene and exploring this run for school board. all these things that you think about as the voter, but not necessarily, unless you're in the campaign, what you think about how you want to present yourself, and this a fear of turning off voters, but also a desire to be true to yourself and what you represent and what you're going to bring, and knowing that authentic voice really has to trump everything,
Yeah.
whether people like it or not.
Yeah, I felt that experience even just working with campaigns, because I've been on calls where it's been I did a lot of campaigning for Lauren Underwood. I have a ton of her stuff in the background, but I did a lot of work with her, and I remember it was kind of hard because you want to please everyone. You want to get the votes and you want to win, because winning is how you get a seat at the table. But there was times there's this one specific call where there was like a little blurb, because I got to print out the list ahead of time, and I had prepared myself, and it was like, oh, they're a Trump supporter, but they're questioning, and they want to, they vote basically on if they like the candidate, so they don't vote Democrat or Republican necessarily. And then I remember as soon as she asked me the question, I was just like, I don't know how to answer this for you, because I can't break down how this works, because you're just going to turn off as soon as I say something. So it's this constant thing of how do you be authentic about your candidate, or if you are the candidate, but then also bringing more people to the table and letting them understand your ideals when you're talking on the phone with someone that they could just hang up on you. Like, it's this thing you have to balance.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have to say that I think you're so brave to do the phone banking, because as you know, I don't really like being on the phone and I don't like calling people I don't know. And I think a lot of people feel that way. And it takes so much courage to just go down a list and call people and advocate for this candidate. And some people, are not happy to hear from you. Some people hang up, some people get angry, and it takes a lot of courage to do that. And I know that right before this call, we talked about your background, right? And whether that was okay or not, because this
Mhm.
is not a political or partisan show,
And
but
also, we're in agreement on some things, but like not all the candidates in my background. She's like we're two separate people, so I don't want anyone to get mad at her for things in my background.
right. Well, and if you were someone else I was interviewing, that's that's their prerogative what to have in their background. But even so, you get to show up authentically, and you get to show up in your wise leadership. And part of that authenticity is supporting your causes and standing up for what you believe in. And in our country, we're supposed to be able to have the dialogue, right? It's not, one side hating the other. It's supposed to be an acceptance of different points of view. And, it's part of like thinking about running for the school board, and moving ahead with running. My belief about politics or school boards, things like that, is that the more diversity you have at the table, diversity of thought and belief and perspective, that the better result you get, the more well-rounded result you get. And it's going to be harder to get there, because you're not all just yesing each other and patting each other on the back. But when you think about it from different angles, you get a better result for everyone. And being a psychologist, I want to bring that angle in, right? That's my platform of mental health matters. And and again, like, some people can like it or not like it. They can vote for me or not, but that I have to be true to myself
Yeah.
in that. And I think, at 13, you have been so brave and wise to do that. I mean, at 13, as I said in the email that went out this week, I mean, when I was 13, I was worried about fitting in, and my makeup and my hair and looking right.
That's
And
part of it too.
it's good to know you're not perfect, maybe, or not, that you have these normal teenage things too, right? And
Mhm.
it must be hard sometimes for you, being so mature for your age. And I mean, you spend a lot of time with adults in these interactions with your
Mhm.
causes. It must be hard sometimes too, to have that. expectation maybe that you're not a, normal teenager or that you're above that
I
stuff.
find the harder thing for me is a lot of people thinking I am a normal teenager that's like masquerading as this activist, but I have adults in the background solving everything.
Uh,
And I know
uh-huh.
that's been the harder thing of just like trying to get people to understand like I do know what I'm talking about. And I'm not saying that in a way to brag or have a big head. I'm just saying that because I understand politics. I might not know everything about it, but I have a good knowledge of it. I've organized events by myself, or at least I don't want to say by myself because I've had so much help and support, but I've done things without needing a lot of assistance or
Mhm.
having an adult control me, because I know that's a lot of the rhetoric you also see with a lot of other young activists, whether it was the Parkland kids just coming out and saying we would like common sense gun reform because this is an experience we had, or having Greta Thunberg come out and talk about climate change. They've all been accused of being bought out, owned by their parents, owned by media, stuff like that. So I think that's a harder thing when you're a teenager, trying to get people to understand you're serious about these issues, but you're also like expecting. Sorry, I'm going down a tangent, but
No, it's fine.
there's also,
Good.
but on the flip side of it, it's also frustrating when adults are like, oh, the younger generation has us covered. They'll help us. And with
Mhm.
things like climate change or gun violence, you can't say that because we need to help work on climate change now. And a ton of 16-year-olds cannot do it alone when we don't have legislative support.
Yeah, 100%, and it is, I think, this catch 22, and I've certainly seen that as well, that this like accusation that you're just regurgitating what you hear at home, or
Yeah,
that you're like a puppet. And it's funny because if they sat around our dinner table, right,
that's what I always
they
say.
would know
Yeah.
that you're leading the charge. They would know that there's debate at the table, that it's not everyone saying yes, yes, and patting each other on the back. And we look at those different angles. And, I probably wouldn't be running for school board right now if it hadn't been for all of your involvement and the awakening that brought to our family,
Mhm.
and sense of duty and responsibility to do more and to be more. And as we've said, it's not enough to talk about these issues around your dining table. It's a great start, and
Yeah.
it is where it starts, right? But you do have to take it outside your doors and into your
Mhm.
community.
Yeah, I think one thing I always think about, a good example of this is during the 2020 Democratic primaries. Most of us identify as Democratic, but like there were so many candidates. I think we can all agree there was like 20 candidates. They had to have two debate nights. It was a lot, and we all had. I started supporting Jill Brand, but basically, when it got sooner, I liked Elizabeth Warren. My stepdad liked Pete Buttigieg. My stepmom liked Bernie. So you can see that these discussions were still not all in agreement because those are all very different candidates. You have very different personalities that go along with supporting a candidate. So even though we may have all supported a Democratic candidate, we did not all agree.
Right, right, for sure. And Isabel and I drove to Iowa to listen to the soapbox talks, and it was fantastic to actually hear the candidates in person talking, and to still walk away with different thoughts and ideas
Yeah.
about that. And I think that's one of the things that makes this country great, is the opportunity for debate and conversation, and a willingness to hear the other person out.
And one thing I've seen this. I'm also not like when I if I make a generalization, I'm not trying to call out every supporter of a movement or any of that. That's not, just a quick disclaimer in case I don't say anything with enough disclaimers at the moment. But basically, I one thing I think we should all listen to each other, especially even when we're in our own political parties, because even in our own political parties, things can be polarizing. Right now, at least in the Democratic Party, you are seeing a divide between more moderate and centrist people with more progressive people. And one thing I try to do as someone who identifies more on the progressive side, I'm not going to say I'm all the way on that because I have mixed opinions on things, but I always try to listen to the other side because I think we all have the same goal. We all want with specific things like we all want people to have health insurance, whether we believe in Medicare for all or expanding the ACA. We all want, you know, immigrants to have a chance, whether which system we're using. We all want police to be held accountable, whichever side you're on with that debate. So I think one thing we need to realize is even though we may have different ways of going about things, we all have the same values. So we should not attack someone on their character for things like that.
Hmm. Well, and I think that most of the time you should not attack someone on their character,
Yeah, I just,
Yeah, no, I'm not correcting you. I just think that that's where this goes, that's where this divide
mhm,
goes. And if we stuck to the issues,
yeah,
we would be a lot better off because nobody wants their character to be attacked. As a psychologist, I really believe we're all doing the best we can with what we have, with our belief systems, with what we've been taught. And I do believe I'm an optimist. I believe in the goodness of people, and I believe that people are doing what's right. And it is these conversations
mhm,
that shift perspective and how we can educate one another. And that I do think that how we all improve is through relationships and
yeah.
conversation,
Mhm.
and not just singing to the choir. Singing to the choir doesn't actually
Yeah.
move us forward. So,
Because as we can move on to more wise leadership questions, but
well,
you know,
this
as
is
we're
why
seeing now, it's becoming very hard to get things done because the House is like whichever side you're on, we can agree how this is going. The House is majority Democratic, so you know they might all be talking on the floor, but most of the time they vote a certain way. But then you hit the Senate that's very divisive, that is pretty split, and you have a Republican leader instead of a Democratic leader where singing to the choir does nothing and everything gets shut off once we hit the Senate because it's two different opinions. So
Mhm.
what we're seeing now is we're seeing all these really great, like they are great bold ideas, but they're not passing because we're just talking back to our bases.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, and government always works best when both sides work together. It's
Yeah.
that diversity of opinion coming together and being able to look at all of the issues, the
Mhm.
social issues, the economic issues, and everything that we face, foreign policy
Mhm.
and immigration, and all of these things together, and try to find what's right and what's
Uh-huh.
doable.
One
So
Yeah, one thing I think it might have even been Paul Ryan who said this, but I think he was saying that government is actually a direct uh sorry, it's a direct way of seeing how the public is acting. So right now we see a divisive government because our public's very divisive. We've passed a lot of things when it's been less divisive, when either the president has a really high approval rating or stuff like that. So I think to I do understand to blame government for some gridlock, but we should also be looking at ourselves and looking how the public is acting because that's just a direct representation because we're voting on these people to go in.
absolutely. Yeah, it's just a microcosm of the
Mhm.
greater whole.
It's just
And
a couple hundred people instead of millions of people.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I think that is another reason that I wrote this book specifically for women, right? Trying to create gender equality in leadership. Um and it does speak to social issues and even evolutionary psychology and neuropsychology and why things are the way they are, but it doesn't focus on external change. It focuses on internal
Mhm,
change because it does start with us. And I'm not trying to minimize the obstacles that are out there that women have to overcome to their leadership, but it starts with us first. We have
mhm,
to overcome our internal obstacles to make sure we're owning our leadership and throwing our hat in the ring and working together, building each other up as women and rooting for each other, not against each other, really
mhm,
living that collaboration instead of competition.
mhm,
Which is why I'm also pairing with Keisha Earl in this school board race, because I just think you're better together than apart overall. And if we can help one another with because we have similar platforms about socio-emotional development and mental health and education and critical thinking in education, why not support one another instead of competing against each other?
Yeah, I also think a lot of times what's going on in the female population might be it's kind of a direct representation of what's going on with all populations. It's just women are told we can be more emotional, but then punished when we are. We're told we can cry, but when we do at board meetings or whatever, it's considered too dramatic. And this is also things that the thing with a lot of times men have to face a double standard where they can't show their emotions, which then causes this overall like gruffness and this thing where, because we rarely see like two men really being friends in a way that's not competitive or not in a sorry, I'm struggling to speak, but in a way that's not super competitive, in a way that we see in the female population, it's just women are put on blast. You can also see this in non-binary communities. It's really basically, but I think first we do need to move past these obstacles that we face because we're not gonna. Women have a lot less wiggle room. It's really unfortunate, but we do. If we make a mistake, it's going to be put on blast more. And that's not to say mistakes aren't okay, because everyone makes them. I make them all the time. But I think we first need to move past those mental obstacles so then we can be ready to go. We have our battle armor on and we're ready to go to these boardrooms, to go in and shake things up, to run for Congress, to run for school board, to become a leader in your community. But it all starts with getting through those mental blocks, getting rid of that internalized misogyny, saying that you don't understand or you don't know enough, because you do know enough and you can do it. And especially when it comes to women running for office or people in general, especially, is that you need to stop saying you're not qualified, because if you fit all the qualifications on that piece of paper to run for office. So I think we need to stop expecting everyone to be perfect and expecting everyone to be a lawyer if they're going to run for office, and getting everyday people in there. Right now, we just elected an astronaut to Senate. That's not an everyday job, but that's not seen as a governmental
political, right.
And I'm very excited for Mark
Yeah.
to be in the Senate.
Yeah. No, and that is part of what I think about diversity. Obviously it's having gender diversity and racial diversity and all these other pieces, but it's also, career diversity of expertise is what I really think benefits everyone. And like you said, like this person is an astronaut. They're obviously very bright. They're obviously a good problem solver, a good critical thinker. And it's those kinds of skills and talents that we need in all levels of government and all positions.
And you also don't need to attend an Ivy League college to do that. We just elected our first president to not attend an Ivy League college, and I think he's qualified for the job. I think he will. I think he's right for the job, even though he might have not attended an Ivy League college. When we've had previous presidents who have, and I don't think they were as qualified as him. So I think there's a lot of just societal standards that we have to move past if we want full-on representation. We have to be okay electing gender nonconforming people and don't let pronouns get in the way of your run, because you can teach your constituents to refer to you with they, them pronouns or whichever ones you want. There's all these, we need to get past these standards, or, worrying about being the first woman, the first queer person, the first transgender person, and run for your community. And you are qualified if you fit that like list of bullet points on every
right.
board of election paper.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So Isabelle, I'm really curious as to like where you get your inspiration from. You're very well versed in historical leadership and the women who have come before you and different people. And I'd love to know who are some of the women that inspire you and that you have looked up to be the leader that you are.
I'm certainly gonna forget some because there are so many people out there in general. A lot of recent people that I saw run for one of the people that inspires me is actually Kelly Crouch. She ran for the Arkansas State House, and I just love the campaign she ran. Louis Snodgrass, they ran for. These people all lost their election, but that's okay because they showed up. They ran. Sorry, they're non-binary. They ran for the South. I think it was South Dakota State House and lost, but that's okay because they ran. I'm also inspired by more giants in the field, like Geraldine Ferraro, the first female vice presidential nominee. Kamala Harris, of course. We have our first female vice president now. A woman like Lauren Underwood, even small candidates like Lori Summers up there who ran for Will County Coroner and won. People who are qualified for the job and have put themselves out there, because as I'm seeing now, I never thought campaigning was easy, but now that I'm very involved in one, I'm realizing how hard it is to even do one for school board. So I think I'm obviously forgetting so many people, but there are so many people like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Sonia Sotomayor, Sandra Day O'Connor, people on both sides of the aisle that have shown that they can lead and have really paved the way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, you inspire me every day, and I am just so proud of all the work that you're doing out there, and that at such a young age you have found this voice, which so many women, it takes them a lot longer to find their voice. Do you have any parting words for other students, for other teenagers your age, middle school and high school? Do you have any parting words for them?
Well, I think that if you have an interest in activism, or even we're interested in this current election, stay active, keep doing your research, turn on those news alerts unless they really stress you out, but I recommend them. Um, and just try your best. I'm not saying you're going to get to automatically be in, like, get the experience I have, because a lot of mine were just luck with connections, but maybe plan a small protest on the side of the road like I did. I just held a couple signs on the side of the road, didn't even need a permit, and we got a couple nice things from that. And just go to protests, do your research. Do be careful of the pandemic now. Don't break regulations to do that. Be careful if you're attending any protests, but just keep active. Even if you are a Democrat and you're happy Joe Biden is president, keep active, and it's okay to hold your politicians accountable. Just know that it's okay if you don't agree with every decision Biden makes, Lauren Underwood makes, any other people. It's okay to have that, and just keep doing your research.
Awesome. A couple points that you make that I do want to circle back to just real quick. The point that you can support someone and really give them credit and recognize them even if they don't win. That is still inspiring and encouraging, just to see women putting themselves out there, and you don't have to win to be that leader or to be an inspiration to others.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then,
Mhm.
just starting somewhere, one of the reasons you call it luck about connections, but you made that happen by emailing the Kirsten Gillibrand campaign. So something that seems like, oh, what's going to happen with that? Nobody's going to read that or respond to that. You just never know. So, not really like attaching so much to the outcome, but making the effort and seeing what happens.
Mhm. Yeah, I think, but yeah, I think it's very clear, if you want to run for office, and even if you think I'm not going to win, there's no way I could win. First of all, you can win, but even if you don't, that's okay. I think, as I mentioned Kelly Kraut earlier, she ran in Arkansas, pretty solid red state, as a Democrat, and she got 39% of the vote, which might not sound like a lot, but 39% in an extremely red county where she got a lot of Republicans to vote for her, that's impressive. To get For Louise Snodgrass to even get on the ballot as someone who's non-binary in South Dakota and works a job at a farm, that's impressive either way. And Hillary Clinton didn't win, but she made a big impact on politics forever. Kamala Harris did not win the presidential primary, but she made it on the ticket, and now she's going to be our first female vice president. Geraldine Ferraro did not win in whatever year it was. She actually lost to a Reagan landslide, but she will forever be the first female vice presidential candidate, Shirley Chisholm, didn't win, but her name's everywhere. So I think it's winning is nice and it's good, but don't do it just to win, and don't say you're not going to do it because you don't think you're going to win.
That is great advice, and I think that's great advice for both the young and the not so young, us adults too. I think that's beautiful advice. And Isabelle, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show today as our pre-Thanksgiving guest. And I am so proud of you. And this was just a really rich and deep discussion that I'm grateful for to share with our community and our audience. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for being here. And I wish you a really beautiful Thanksgiving. And I know this is a hard one with the pandemic, and a lot of us are having much smaller Thanksgivings this year. Remember what we're grateful for those that are healthy, that have not gotten COVID. And just there's always a bright side. There's always something to be grateful for.
Yeah,
And
thanks for tuning in, and I hope everyone has a great Thanksgiving and stays safe. Be careful, and just keep being active, keep learning, and consider running for office, consider doing anything to help. Also, we just had our website go live at electdonnamarino.com. You can find all the information on the school board campaign, and you can find out how to sign our petition and volunteer. Just needed to put that out there.
Well, thank you. She is a great campaign assistant. Thank you, everybody, and have a great Thanksgiving. And we will see you next week. Bye.